Triggers may also be used to prevent changes to rows that have already been reconciled or should not be changed for other reasons. In this lesson, I'll be copying and pasting from the Chapter 7 exercise files. Keep in mind that I still have the customer table from the previous lesson, so if you haven't followed along, you can create it from the exercise file. I'm going to be using the Scratch database, and I'm going to switch over here to the exercise file for Chapter 7 and scroll down to Movie 2, Preventing Automatic Updates, and I'm just going to copy and paste everything from here all the way down to there. But first, let's just take a look at it. I'm going to drop the widget sale table and recreate it. And the reason I'm recreating it is because I want to add this reconciled flag. And you notice that I'm inserting some rows into the table. And as I insert those rows, I'm setting that flag just on the middle one on item number 2. And I'm setting that flag on that one, and it's not going to be set on the others. So I want to prevent updates to this row by setting that flag. And so here's the trigger that does this. And the first thing you're going to notice here is this delimiter statement. This is not actually an SQL statement. This is something that MySQL uses in their command line client that I decided to also implement in SID because it's a common paradigm in MySQL. What this does is it allows you to use semicolons within a statement without actually terminating the statement. So this create trigger actually has two statements in it. Well, it's got the if that requires a semicolon, and it has this signal statement that also requires a semicolon because it's a separate statement. And so in order for this all to be treated as one unit, I've changed the delimiter from semicolon to this double slash. And so that's a common paradigm in MySQL, and then I set the delimiter back to the semicolon afterwards so that we can use it in the rest of this code. So what this trigger does, you notice that this is a before update on widget sale. So when you go to update an already existing row in the widget sale table, before the update is applied, this triggered code will be executed. And what this triggered code does, you notice we have the for each row, which is required for create trigger, and then we have this begin end block. And that allows more than one statement to be part of this trigger. So the first statement is this if, which checks the reconciled flag in this row that's about to be updated. And again, we have this new ID. So we have the row that's about to be updated, and it's all ready to be updated into the table, but it hasn't been committed yet to the database. So we check and we see for that row whether the reconciled flag is greater than 0. And if it is, we're going to set an error. We're going to throw an error. This signal statement allows you to throw an error in MySQL. Now, the signal statement was new in MySQL version 5.5, and we're running 5.6 here. And 5.5 is relatively new in the last few years. So I've got some alternate code I can show you that works as a kludge to work around this, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But for now, you should learn about this signal statement. This signal statement is specific to MySQL and allows you to set this MySQL state 45000, which is a generic unhandled exception, which means that it's an error that will end a transaction. And I can set the message text, and you'll see that we actually get this error message that says cannot update reconciled row in widget sale. Then we set the delimiter back, and we start a transaction because that's the only way that we can actually prevent this table from getting updated is if we do this update within a transaction and we throw an error that will end the transaction before the data is committed. So let's look at what happens. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste all this code. So it'll drop the table, it'll recreate the table, it'll insert some data, including a reconciled row, and then we'll try and update that reconciled row. So here it is, and you'll notice there's our error, query number 9, error, cannot update reconciled row in widget sale. So that's our error message there from the signal in the trigger. So what I tried to do here is I tried to update the row where the ID equals 2, which is this one here. I tried to add 9 to the quantity, and you notice that it didn't allow it. Here's the row before the update, and here's the row after the update, and they're exactly the same. If I try to do this to one of the other rows that's not reconciled, like for example, row number 1, I don't get the error, and you'll notice that row number 1 was 5 before the update and 14 after. 9 got added to it, and it worked just fine. So our trigger is doing what it's supposed to do. If the reconcile flag is set, it's not allowing the update, and if the reconcile flag is not set, then it is allowing the update. Remember I mentioned to you that this signal only works in MySQL version 5.5 and later. So what I have here in your exercise files, I've got alternate code, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it in right here. This is alternate code that will work in previous versions of MySQL. It'll also work in this version. The thing is that it fakes the error by trying to update a table that doesn't exist. And this table that doesn't exist is the error message. And so it's kind of a kludge, it's kind of a workaround to the fact that you didn't used to have any way of actually setting an error. And so when I press go on this, let me go ahead and set this back to ID number 2 so that we get the error. And you see we get an error that says base table or view not found, table blah 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 doesn't exist, and that blah 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 is scratch.error cannot update reconciled row in widget sale, doesn't exist. And that is right here. That's the name of our table, error cannot update reconciled row in widget sale. And you notice again our table did not get updated, and this works just as well if I change this to number 1. You'll see that, in fact, the quantity does get updated and we don't get that error message. So it works just as well. It's just not as clean, and we're not getting the error message in a clean way. And that's why we have that signal statement. So triggers may be used to prevent changes to tables or rows that should not be changed. It's a simple usage and it's a valuable business tool. Keep in mind that triggers, errors, and signals are all implemented differently from system to system. This code will work with MySQL, but you'll need to change it in order for it to work with other systems. And again, for this chapter, I'm not deleting tables at the end of each lesson. I'm going to leave these tables in place so that we can continue to use them in the next movie.